Hi, Bethany Manxelo here. You have joined us for the magnificent monthly Millwall podcast, which features thoughts from the panel about what affects the beautiful game and Millwall. Enjoy!
Hello everyone and welcome to June's No One Likes Us Talkin's monthly show. I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the No One Likes Us Talking team, a former Lion, Phil Coleman, and the man that thoroughly celebrates every Millwall game, apparently, Ted Robinson.
Not everybody likes them, but they don't care.
Evening, Phil and Ted. How are you both?
Hi, Myles. Ted.
Evening, Phil.
Is that true? You thoroughly celebrate every Millwall game, Ted?
I'll tell you what, Myles, there'll be a few people that sit around me that would say I don't celebrate now and again because there's been well, as we always know following Millwall, there's been occasions when not to celebrate, if you know what I mean. But I try the best to make the best of it, mate, whatever the game may be.
Firstly, then, how are you both? Obviously, what have you been up to since the season ended? I've kind of found it quite boring. Phil, what about you?
Not really.
I know you're looking forward to the England games.
No. I like the break. I always switched off when we finished our last game, and the manager said you're on holiday. I was away, and I like to switch off. And it was normally 6 weeks. You didn't touch a ball, you didn't do anything. You just kept yourself ticking over. So this time it's cricket. I've been watching sport. I've been up and watching local rugby league games and plenty of sport on TV, from Formula 1 to, cycling. I watch One Man and His Dog, to be honest with you. But I will say, Myles, I've got mixed feelings about the Euros. Whilst I desperately love England to win, and even the other teams, I'm looking forward to watching some, the Dutch and the Germans, etc., play football. But I've got mixed feelings, and it's totally and utterly down to Gareth Southgate. I look at the team and I'm not enthused, and I'm looking at the team sheet before the game and I'm thinking, wow, right, this is 4-0, and then all of a sudden I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, why is he not getting a tune out of these top quality players? Why can't he knit it together? The club managers do, but he can't. So I'm not a fan, and so I go into the Euros a bit like the other night against Iceland, feeling, well, can we? But no, apart from that, Myles, the football season will come round quick enough, and it'll be another 30, 40, 50 weeks of the year or whatever it'll take. But no, I'm good, thanks.
Ted, what about you, mate?
Well, I'm not as fortunate as Phil. I can't switch off. I've got grandkids playing in tournaments every weekend the young football teams that they play in. Every one of them seems to hold their tournament day, if you know what I mean. I had Saturday and Sunday last week. I had Saturday and Sunday this week. So football sort of carries on with me, but I'm a bit like Phil when it comes to the Euros. I have been saying that I think we'd win it this year, and there ain't no doubt in the fact that we have the ability to win it, and that's what gets us all excited. We know what talent there is in this England squad. But when you watch them playing like we did the other night against Iceland, and you know what there is in there, but it don't seem to be coming out. And like Phil said, that the buck only stops with one person, and that'll be the manager. So I do think this, if he doesn't win it this year, Southgate, then I think they should move him on and get someone in for the World Cup, without a doubt. But listen, we always live in hope. It's a bit like Millwall. At the start of the season, we're got high expectations. Start of this Euros, I've got high expectations, but they don't always come true, don't they? But let's see.
Ted, I feel your pain when it comes to tournaments. The season finishes for my grandson, and there's a tournament every single Sunday, from 10 till 4 for about the next 8 weeks, and I'm thinking, hang on, that's the start of the season again. When did kids' football become 52 weeks a year?
I know, Phil. It's incredible, really. And tell you what, for an old man like me, it's a long old day standing out there in the sun watching them. Especially when my grandchildren, bless them, are all reasonably good at it, so they tend to go quite away in the tournaments. There's no no ducking out halfway through. They seem to be getting, if it's not finals, it's semi-finals. But I love it. It's a proper football, if you know what I mean, to me, watching
I said to my daughter, I said, knock some of these tournaments on the head and I'll take him and play cricket and play tennis, or, we'll go paddleboarding, or we'll do a summer sport. No, he likes it. He's with his mates. They always seem to get to the semi-final or the final, and he's a goalkeeper, so they rely on him probably more than anyone else. So, okay, then I'm going to buy myself a bloody one of those shooting sticks, you know what I mean? God,
Well, you're right, though, Phil. They do miss out a bit because, both me and you in the summer days when we were kids, it was out playing cricket, or, but they don't seem to get the opportunity to do that these days. It's just football, which is a shame, really.
Yeah.
We will take a break there and listen to myself and Stan Godwin talking about local non-league side Bermondsey Town, who's had a revamp this summer. Bermondsey Town, you heard of them?
I have, but what about then?
They're a football club based in Rotherhithe. They're currently members of the Kent Football League Premier Division and play at the St Paul Sports Ground, Salter Road. They ground share with Fisher on match days. It's where the Millwall Lionesses, Romans and Pride play on Sundays.
Oh yeah, I know. Well, if Millwall are away, I'll get along.
Check out the fixtures and details on the Bermondsey Town website.
I will. I'll give it a go.
I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the No One Likes Us Talking team of Phil Coleman and Ted Robertson. Make sure to get down to Bermondsey Town next season when Millwall is not playing or are away. We could do with your support, to be fair. And Stan, I'm here to see you down at St Paul's. Indeed, many fans state that politics has no place in football. However, politics is becoming increasingly prominent, from the political decisions surrounding our ground to the failure of the existing government to get the governance bill through before they called an election. Since the election was announced, more than 200 plus fan groups have signed a letter from the Football Supporters Association calling on the major parties to include the football governance bill in their pre-election manifestos. Those 200 plus supporter organisations represent hundreds and thousands of voters across England and Wales. The football governance bill, the culmination of years' work, is a popular, ready-made piece of legislation that any incoming government could implement in its first 100 days. So why is it important? The bill's reforms represent a big step forward for football governance in England and Wales. It enshrines in law fundamental principles that would block future breakaway leagues, improve financial sustainability, protect club heritage, and give fans a more significant say in how the game and the clubs they love are run. Phil, as an ex-pro player and of course former local politician, would you support urgently implementing this bill, or might these new arrangements have some drawbacks?
Absolutely, I'd back it. I'd normally say keep politics out of football. But in this case, we need the football governance. It's desperately needed. It's to stop the rich getting richer. As you mentioned, breakaway leagues, keeping clubs sustainable, not overspending clubs by success. And sadly, we've lost clubs. Bury up in Manchester has gone. Southend are struggling financially. They've had points docked. Torquay the same. And it's urgently needed, the implementation. There are no drawbacks as the game, clubs, fans, they need protection. And they need protection from these owners. They need protection from money. And they need protection on the odd occasion from poor management and leadership. And if not, the bigger clubs will just get bigger and they will move away. And for me, somebody's got to support the fans, because at the end of the day, the clubs are not owned by the fans, but they're the fans' club. And I stood, and I was a city councillor for 7 years, and I know how tough it is to get something changed. Normally, I'd say 3 years, just to have a street lamp changed, because of planning laws, because people vote against it, but this seems to have all party consensus. It seems to have an awful lot of backing. It's got all those people behind it. and as you say, it could be implemented in the first 100 days. Any politician, any party that puts this forward will get the backing of the vast majority of football fans, because as I've already mentioned, it's needed, and there is some protection needed. And it's all right Manchester City going to court and trying to have over the governance that's already in place. This is a big stick that, as you say, just keeps it all tight, keeps it together, and hopefully it puts the clubs back where they belong under proper governance and for the fans.
Ted, how do you think the bill will affect club management, players and fans?
Well, look, politics is politics. I know what Phil means by trying to keep it out of sport, but unfortunately it finds its way and is in everything that we do. The problem with football, and I think Phil's been speaking about it there to a certain extent, is that these club owners that have come in have dragged it away from the common fan. I don't like saying common, but the average person, should we say, in the sense that, you know, we all love our club so much, and it's such a big part of our lives, that whilst I understand there'll be Manchester City fans now, you know, loving the moments that they've got, but the people that own their club could quite easily take it away from them, because at the end of the day, there is, without a doubt, getting closer and closer to having a European league, which, you know, I mean, with the best will in the world, if you start playing teams from abroad where it's been a once-in-a-lifetime journey to see your club play in Europe, all of a sudden that becomes week in, week out. How many people will be able to afford to go home and away for them sort of games, you know? It needs to be controlled, which is what the word I say. When I read things like I did today about Phil Foden, and I there's no bigger admirer than Phil Foden and me, but his contract's going to be 350 grand a week to be playing football. That tells you how far it's moved away from the average fan that goes. You know, these guys are on huge amounts of money. Whilst I never begrudge any of them it because of what they play, there needs to be some sort of control that keeps them in touch with us fans. And the governance bill takes a lot of that into consideration. It makes sure that we, as fans, have a right to have a say in what goes on with our clubs. Unfortunately, I think there's too many football clubs in our country now that have blocked fans out away from the opinions that they have and have gone off on their own tangent to do things. So it's massively important. And like Phil was sort of hinting at there, I think any of these political parties that turned round and backed this bill and said it will be put into place within 100 working days, and that will certainly gain the votes of lots of people, I think, because I think every football fan that you speak to understands why there is a need for this governance bill. That's why it's been a work in progress for quite a while. As we all know, things in politics don't normally happen overnight. There's been a lot of work gone in behind. There's a lot of fault in it, and there's a lot that is good about it. And it would certainly make life for our football clubs, in my opinion, and us as fans, a damn sight better than it seems to be going at this moment.
Yeah, 100%. Will our Millwall supporters promote the action? We can only wait and see if they announce their position. We'll take a break there and listen to our sponsor and great friend of the show, Dean Wilson.
Hello, Dean. Myles here.
Hi, Myles.
Hi, mate. Your funeral directors are famed for caring for Millwall families. Where are you located, and how far afield have you travelled to accommodate the needs of families?
Well, we've got two branches. Our main one's in Eltham, in Wellhall Road, and we've got another one in Lock's Bottom, which is near Orpington. Millwall fans all round us. We cover all areas, and we do travel for families. We had a lady very recently that passed away up north, but it was her wish to come back to South London for a funeral, so that's what we did. We went up to Sheffield and we brought her back. We quite often carry out funerals for Millwall families all over South London and Kent, right down to the South Coast.
Dean Wilson, independent family funeral directors, caring for Millwall families, no matter how near or far Should you need them at any time, ring 0208 33 11 111. That's 0208 33 11 111.
I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the Noel Lights Talking team of Phil Coleman and Ted Robinson. Thanks very much to Dean Wilson for sponsoring our monthly show. The US Soccer Foundation was the first to rule that kids under 11 years old aren't allowed to head the ball, and there is also restrictions on players aged 11 to 13 doing headers during football training. In January 2020, Scotland became the first European country to ban heading a football for under 12s in training. The Irish FA quickly followed this. The Football Association is introducing a new rule to phase out deliberate heading in grassroots youth football games across England. The new rule is aimed at under 11 games and below and will cover all league clubs and affiliated school matches. This is the latest new rule from the FA around headers in football. Previously, FA guidelines have banned headers in practice and training sessions for children under 12. So many people are worried about how headers may affect footballers' health. Late last year, research found a link between football and an increased risk of developing a brain condition, dementia. The new rule is designed to reduce the risk of head injuries. The FA said, "Our aim is to create more technical opportunities for players with the ball at their feet, allow for more effective playing time, and reduce the amount of time the ball is in the air during a match." Regarding health and safety, clubs, professional associations, and ruling bodies are responsible for minimising the risk of harm to those who play a sport. Health and safety law does not cover safety matters arising from the sport or activity. For example, damaging a wrist when saving a penalty or being injured following a bad tackle during a football game. Note that a duty of care under common civil law may apply. Competitors or players participating in competitions and training are genuinely subject to non-statutory rules set by the sport's national governing bodies. These rules will include supervision, training, and in-play emergency procedures and medical provision. These rules and guidelines may go beyond workplace health and safety legislation requirements. What is the Professional Footballers Association's position on the issue?
Where to begin on this one, Myles? I'm going to start by saying my total and utter sympathy to those ex-players struggling with any form of brain condition, particularly if it's proven that it's come from heading the ball. I've certainly met a few ex-players. Some are really upset about it. I can think of one that's looking for some payback because of it. He's absolutely sure it's football that's caused his issues. But I've also met some that wouldn't have changed an absolute thing. So the question you asked, the PFA, I'll tell you what, the PFA, the Professional Footballers Association, that's the players' union. They want players to be tested. And that's where I begin my story. About 4 or 5 years ago, I actually volunteered. I bumped into the PFA rep for the Southern region and go on then, I'll do it. So I trundled along to the Institute of Sport in Tottenham Court Road and I spent 5 hours being tested. Every single brain test you could have, including the CT or whatever they call it, a CAT scan, which took pictures, slices of my brain. And it was, to be fair, it was quite scary because they did assure me that if I walked out of there's nothing wrong. But 5 hours of constant tests by doctors and specialists in reaction, in recall, in memory, you name it, I went through it. And it was all sent off to a test lab in Australia. And a year later, I got the results back. And as I told the doctor, I was knocked unconscious about 10 times in my football career. I saw stars once a week, and he fell off the chair. And my results, and I'm touching wood here, have come back absolutely clear. So for somebody that's probably gone through a career where my sole aim was to tackle and head, I headed plenty. And when I told the doctor about the last time, the fella came in, headbutted me for Torquay. He came in. I walked off the pitch with blood pouring out my forehead. The physio held my head. The doctor put 5 stitches in, covered it with plastic skin, and I went out and carried on heading the ball. And again, the doctor fell off the chair. You should have been out for 3 or 4 weeks and you should have seen a head specialist. No, we just carried on. Now, whether that attitude and that style of football has contributed, and we all know about the heavy balls weighing a ton with a lace in it, and we know that just about every single part of football going back, let's say 30 years, the fullbacks launched it, somebody headed it. The goalkeeper launched it, somebody headed it. The throw on, somebody headed it. A free kick, corners, somebody headed it. In general play, the winger crossed it, somebody headed it. The occurrence of heading in a game was far higher than it is now. The game has changed, the ball has changed, the pitches have changed. They're not muddy, which added to the weight of the ball. But we've also changed the game. It's fundamentally a more skillful game. It's played on the ground. So things have changed from my day, and I'm touching wood again. I was lucky compared to some, and there's been some high-profile cases like Jeff Astle. I get that big time, but there is a risk in sport. I get the FA and the Rugby Football Union. They're trying to make sport safer, but there's a limit, and I think every player and every parent knows there's a risk. If you don't want to get injured, don't play football, don't box, don't play rugby, don't go skiing, because you can take away the silly risks, but you can't take away all of the risks. And I think the problem is also that national governing bodies like the Football Association and the Rugby Football Union, they're scared because the claims against them are growing. The last time I looked, I think it was 240 rugby players have basically said that rugby has contributed to their brain illness. So for me, with 11 million playing football, a very small percentage have got football-related head or dementia. It is a very, very small minority. But if there's any ex-players out there, speak to the PFA, because they definitely wanted more players to be tested. They wanted to come up with a sample to say there is definitely this heading problem. But when you look at what they've done, under 11s now in England, America have been doing it for years, they don't head a ball. But then I see games, under 10s, under 11s, where they're shouldering the ball or they're turning their back on the ball because they haven't mastered the art of passing the ball along the ground and that style of play. So I think we're in transition. I think the coaching needs to be better. I think the kids need to be encouraged to play the ball along the ground and stop chipping corners in. It's silly to see, but they chip corners in and nobody can hit it, either in defence or attack. So I think we're in a transition with young kids not being able to head the ball, so they've got to learn to play smarter on the ground. So like the Premier League do and most other divisions, to be honest. But I'm sitting there on the fence, really, because, as I say, my story is one thing, and to use Jeff Astle again, that's another thing. So I think the FA are probably right in moving towards banning heading, but the game has changed, and I've also said that perhaps in 40 years' time, when we start looking at dementia from football, for the period that we've just come through, the last 5 years, or perhaps the next 10 years, we might not have any concerns at all. It might have been eliminated because of the style of play, but it's not an easy one. But as I say, my story is I set myself up as a guinea pig. I went through the tests, I had the scans, and touch wood again, that I'm clear at the moment.
That's good to hear. Ted, what do you make of it?
I mean, Phil makes a real good case about it all there. I mean, what you've got to do with this is be realistic regarding things. You know, the trouble is people these days, when they see stories and they get a bit over, what's the word? They get overactive about things, because the bottom line is it's more or less sort of saying, in a sense, that if you head a ball, you will finish up having dementia. Well, there's many people that haven't headed a ball that get dementia. There's many people, like Phil's pointed out, that have headed the ball and done nothing but heading the ball that haven't got dementia. So whilst I'm always looking for people within sport to be protected, and what I mean by that, it's like in rugby you see scrum caps now, in cricket you see the helmets that they wear now. I mean, bearing in mind, Myles, when I was at school, you was lucky if you had a pad to put on, let alone a helmet, and they still had the same hard cricket ball being bowled at you. So whilst I'm in favour of that, which helps to make the game safer in its way, you have to be realistic about things. Now, if you go back to the beginning of sentence, what you said, who was the federation that first ruled it out? The Americans. And what do they do when they play their form of rugby? They stick crash helmets on their blokes. You know, it's what the sport is and how it's played. You have to take that into consideration. And like Phil quite rightly said, if you wanted to say, I don't want anything to happen to me or my kids or anything like that, there wouldn't be any sport. Because sport, by the nature of the fact of what you're doing, will lead to some sort of injuries and things, whatever. What needs to happen here, and there is a big thing about, like Phil was saying, in the days of heading the ball that the likes of Jeff Astle did and whatever, I'm old enough to remember heading the ball with a lace in it, believe it or not, and that was like a boulder coming off your head. So, yeah, I can see where all this is coming from in a sense of, did that have an effect? Did it cause damage to someone? The nature of football now will change because, as we say many times throughout the season, football now, because of the pitches are so beautifully like carpets, you can play it on the floor more often. You don't have to keep humping it up like Phil used to in these days because you was taking the pitch out of the game in them days. So the ball would spend more time in the air. It's nowhere near in the air these days. So the natural progression in pitches and whatever was leading to the ball being on the deck more and more. All I'm saying is we shouldn't make light of it, but we shouldn't go overboard about it. Dementia is out there for lots of other people other than people that get bangs on the head or head the ball and things like that. So, yes, by all means, let's try and get football as safe as possible. I'm actually not against it being banned for kids up until a certain age, because what you want them to do is to learn how to play the ball on the floor. You know, you want them to have the ball at their feet. You want them to give and go and make movement. And that's right. At that age, they don't need to be heading the ball on a small 5-a-side pitch or a 7-a-side pitch. Keep the ball down and make the ball do the work down there and play your football. But you have to come to a sensible decision about it. Otherwise, football will change. And I don't think there's any better sight in football, in my opinion, than someone throwing themselves full length and scoring a goal with a diving header. And that excitement shouldn't be taken away from football because, if you like, health and safety, which in my line of work sometimes drives me mad because it's not realistic and it's a bit over the top, if you like to call it that. And I think there is a danger that the whole thing could go over the top and where we protect everybody too much and it wouldn't be the sport that we all love. Let's just accept that there is injuries in any sport, whether it's dementia or anything else, but let's try and protect people at the same time. But let's not eliminate everything that we believe might cause an injury, because it's impossible to do anyway. But that's my thoughts on it. By the way, I just like to add, I have got all the sympathy in the world for all them people that are suffering from dementia. By the way, the people in football that have that belief that it was down to football. We all wish that there was some way or some form that we could stop dementia, and hopefully there's lots of things going on at this moment in time that maybe within the not too distant future, dementia does become a thing of the past because there's some way of controlling it, I think, because as I say, it doesn't only come through knocks on the head, it can come naturally. So let's be realistic and keep sport as sport.
Ted, I will add, Myles, if you don't mind, heading is a fundamental skill of the game.
Oh, yeah.
And I know they've played this game where it was banned and everybody said it was a success, but until you say that heading is banned, it's like chucking a pebble in a pond. Heading is banned. then coaches need to really improve what they're offering these young kids from under 7s upwards, because I'm still seeing across a broad spectrum of areas and teams and players, they're still chipping corners in and they're still taking throw-ons despite heading being banned at under 9, 10, 11. Okay, so the coaching's got to improve, the techniques have got to improve to get the ball on the ground and play football a different way. I reckon, because obviously my son lives in America and he coaches out there, the amount of people that were suing for head injuries was shocking in America, so they had to ban it. Now, we're taking a leaf because we have got people taking the national governing bodies to court over this. They won't insure them, but we've got a problem because is it gene related? Is it age related? Is it that sport related? But I tell you what I'm seeing in my other career, we're losing rugby players in schools. There is a professor up in the north of England who desperately wants all rugby banned in secondary schools. Okay, so parents are now hearing that message. You're not playing rugby, son. It's too dangerous. Cricket, oh, he's bowling at you. Oh, you need pads, you need gloves, you need a crash helmet. Oh, it must be too dangerous. So we're now losing cricket in schools as well because the equipment's too costly. So as you said, Ted, if we are taking every element of risk out of sport, there will be no sport. I can tell you now, cricket, the numbers in schools, the numbers taking part in cricket is dropping. It's not just a risk, it's the cost. Rugby, it's too dangerous. The perception is it's too dangerous. Clubs are getting good numbers, but schools are not, because again, the school has to do a risk assessment, safeguard it, you name it. So we are now in this ratchet cotton wool fear culture that heading a ball is so dangerous, it's not good for you, so don't play football. Fortunately, I don't think the football numbers are dropping. In fact, they're going up. More and more girls are playing. But if we're going to play the ball on the ground, the coaches have got to improve. We've got to have the ball thrown out, and we've got to have patterns of play under 9s and under 10s to eliminate and create a decent game of football to watch. Because you can't have old school football, goalkeeper boots it up the other end and everybody ducks out the way because they're not allowed to head it. I'm seeing it, and I'm sure listeners on this programme will see it. Kids are not heading the ball, they're turning their back on it as it's bouncing. So we've got to say, we've thrown the pebble in the pond, let's improve the coaching, let's improve the techniques, let's improve the technique of actually heading the ball. Because I had some great people coaching me when I was a kid, and when I hit 16, I had the best. I had Barry Kitchen showing me how to hit the ball, how to time, how to get your elbows up, how to protect yourself. Didn't always work because somebody came in and butted you late or threw an elbow. But you've got to get the heading technique right as well, because that's half the battle. You do not want it on your temple. You want it on the correct part of the forehead. So there's a lot about it, but hopefully bit by bit we'll make the game a better game without heading. But at the end of the day, it is a fundamental skill of the game that I don't believe we should ever lose.
You make a great point there, Phil, about people being sued and things like that. Unfortunately, in this world today, that's where health and safety starts coming in, and you start getting these things. So people put things into place to more or less say, well, it wasn't my fault, you can't sue me. And a lot of the time people turn around and make a law or make a rule to say, well, the only way I can save myself from being, sued like that by somebody that might come up with a claim or something like that, is to stop it from happening. In other words, we put something in place where they don't do that. And if you start moving it as it is crept into sport, where you quite rightly point out, Bill, then all of a sudden you won't have that sport anymore, because the fear factor, not only from what actually happens while you're playing, but what might happen to somebody that's allowing you to play. In other words, they get sued themselves. They all of a sudden, nobody's going to be doing it. So it's a very valid point, Phil, like you say. But you're right. The coaching has to improve. As we said earlier, I've been watching kids at tournaments the last couple of weekends, and you're right in everything you say. The kids they can't head a ball now. They don't know how to head a ball. They shouldn't be heading the ball. The football should be better than that. It should be coached into them to keep the ball down and whatever. But yeah, that has to be a given from now on in. That sort of coaching has to take place in the kids, and that will make them better footballers, without a doubt.
And also, Ted, I was a party to repetitive heading. So for 5 days a week, I would do 15 to 30 headers a day. In fact, me and Peter Glazier, he throws me up 20 headers. I give him 20 shots. That was our extra bit of training for 10 minutes after everyone had gone off the pitch. So I got damn good at heading and he got damn good at saving. That repetitive heading has now been taken away. And I can't quite remember how many headers a week, but I think it's 15 headers a week for a pro. For me, that can be 5 in front of the game, 2 games a week. You've done your limit in a couple of days at 5 headers. So is that holding back the development of a professional footballer who's put his name on a contract to play for X amount a week, and you're holding back his development of a skill because of a fear that in the longer run he might end up with dementia? So in the professional game, I'm sorry, but I signed up to tackle, be tackled, head, be headed, sprint and be tripped, have my leg broken, have stitches, because that was the part and parcel of the game that I signed up to. And I would sign up for it again tomorrow. And I would do repetitive heading tomorrow because that was what I signed up for. So there's a bit of me says, let's eliminate unnecessary risk. Probably okay, under 9s, under 10s, under 11s. But I don't understand how you could have a set figure of heading a ball as a pro. I can remember losing the game to a corner, and we spent 2 hours the next day heading from corners. 2 hours heading from corners to eliminate the next game, somebody scoring against us from a header from a corner. So I'm not saying repetitive heading, you're doing 30 a day like I did, but hang on, it's a fundamental skill, and you're signing up to play football, and if you don't like it, don't play. It's as simple as that. I get a little bit emotional because of what we had and what we're losing. And as you said, Ted, it's nothing better than a cross comes in and somebody's at the back post and fantastic header. It's a spectacle, the diving headers of the game. But this will run and run because we have people that are absolutely fundamentally against heading. But
what happened in the next game, Phil, after that, all that heading from corners? I bet that somebody scored from a corner, didn't they?
I've no idea. I felt dizzy, to be honest with you.
It's so dizzy from it. And the next corner come in, you missed it completely. Oh, no.
But that was part of coaching. If you looked at a weakness, you looked at where we conceded goals and you dealt with it. And you dealt with it by improving your technique from heading and marking from corners. So I get where it's coming from. I get the dementia link. But I just think we could do a lot better than throwing a baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. Well, former Lion Bryan King has been loud about dementia matters and its effects on players. Let's hear what he asks.
Good evening. This is Bryan King. Regarding dementia in football, something's been discussed for many, many years. And I feel, personally, that players from the 50s, 60s, the 70s and the 80s are the main sufferers of this illness, primarily caused by the weight and the sort of construction of a football that was used during that era. I feel that players currently playing will not encounter the problems that players during that era would have faced. My own thoughts are that the Premier League, as it is now, and the PFA, should be looking for cures for the players of that era. Take a centre forward or a centre half who's heading a ball sometimes 200 or 300 times a week in training and in matches. Would be no different than a boxer who has 20 or 30 fights during his career, taking punches to his head. Similar effect in weight and power as a football striking a footballer's head. I think we have to look to these associations to start to fund and help the players from that area. And as we've seen, many players have been suffering from this illness. What do you think?
Phil, we'll start with you. What do you think about Brian's?
I think Brian's bang on. I think it is an era. I think it is a generational thing. The 50s, 60s and 70s, the heavy balls, the repetitive heading, the wet pitches and the mud and the whole of that package from that era. Even through the late 70s when the balls did change, we went to these miters. They were still heavy, but nowhere near what was around before. I think it is that era. And I agree. I think we've got one of the richest. We have the richest football association in the world. And I think they should be spending some millions of pounds on looking at how we can support those that are struggling with dementia as ex-players. The PFA do a bit. They have got a benevolent fund, and they do. They help to fund my hip replacement, which obviously was probably brought on through playing football and the amount of training, running, kicking, everything else. So they have a benevolent fund. So I tend to agree with Kingy. We have got a generational thing. As I said earlier, funny enough, if we go 40 years from now, we may not have what we've got now, because certainly the balls, the pitches, the type of the game it is now is nowhere near like it was in the 50s and 60s. So, and the money could well be invested in looking after those people. As much as we're saying we don't want kids to head the ball, we should be looking at people that have gone through that era.
Ted, what do you think?
Yeah, 100% agree with Kingy, as usual. My favourite goalkeeper of all time and the best goalkeeper I've ever seen. But I do agree with what he says. And when we talk about the money that's in football, like I mentioned earlier with Phil Foden getting that amount of money a week and whatever, whilst I understand it, we're talking about the players of today, the guys that go out there and shine for a daily basis with their teams now, and, you know, they're all over the world on the tellies and whatever. The people that Kingy are talking about didn't make that sort of money out of football. They wasn't in that sort of privileged position where Phil Foden, who probably could afford any medical that he wanted to, is probably still gets his medical bills paid for by the club, regardless of the money that he's putting in his bank. The guys that Kingy's talking about never see any of that. And they are the ones that should be helped. And football as a sport deserves to look after these people a lot better than it is doing. I know the PFA do a hell of a lot, and Phil will talk about that, I'm sure, or tell us a lot more about that than we really know the amount that they do. But at the end of the day, the football clubs and the richness that's within our game does not tend to think about the players that brought it to those riches from the years gone by. You know, when you think up into dear old Jimmy Hill, when he actually started to get a football as a proper living wage to play football, with all the riches that was coming in from the receipts in them days for the crowds, you know, quite rightly, he started to get the players a bit more than, you know, they was getting before. But they still wasn't on anywhere near the sort of money that these guys are on now, which means they don't really have to do anything else after their playing careers. In those days, they used to try and rely on some money coming out of the old, what did they have at the end, Phil? Their long-term careers, they used to have testimonials to get some money for them, like, you know. But with the vast amounts of money that there is in football, a lot more should be being done about the people that Kingy's mentioning there. The forgotten footballers, if you like to call them that, in whatever way you like to put it, they deserve a lot more from football in return for what they gave us out on the football field. That's my opinion with it. And there should be some sort of form of organisation, apart from the Professional Footballers Association, that helps to look after some of these people that need to be seen from their days of playing football gone by, that suffer. And it's not only dementia. Phil quite rightly pointed out, you know, his hip went. There's loads of old players like that have suffered in that respect. Dementia's an obvious thing because it's making headlines at the moment with people, but there's all sorts of injuries that footballers from them bygone eras that have suffered throughout their lives because, you know, of what they was doing and what they was putting in for our entertainment out on a football field, you know, and there should be more being done than there actually is, and football should recognise that.
Ted, up to about 1990, and that includes Millwall's team that won promotion and played in the old Division 1. I think all bar one had to go and get a job after they packed up playing. So that tells you about the riches now, the difference between, say, 1990 and before. People went out they finished age 30 and they had to go and get a job. They didn't have the money that is swilling around now. You know, if you are on 10 grand a week at a Division 2, 1 or Championship club, and you stick for 10 years, I doubt very much with the football pension, I doubt very much you'll need a job. But up to about 1990, my brother's a plasterer and has got his own building company. I know Kevin O'Callaghan, he had a decent career. I know he's got a job. You know, all these top players that play for Millwall and other clubs, they've all had to go and get jobs. They need looking after. So let's just say what Kingy said, the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s and up to 1990, these players, they gave their heart and soul. Training is brutal. You know, I would keep mentioning and laughing about running up the Greenwich Hill, running up that hill a couple of times a week for fitness. When you get to my age now, you suddenly look back and you say, oh, I'd have still done it, but I am suffering now. Hit number 1's been replaced thanks to the PFA Benevolent Fund. I got some of it paid. Hit number 2, it's on its way. You know, these are football, sport-related injuries. Would I change the thing? No. Am I suffering with it? Yes. Do I care? No. Because I absolutely loved my football career and I'd have done it again willingly. Even though if somebody said to me, you're going to have a hip replacement when you're 60, well, okay, then I'll have it. But we need the money there from the richest football association in the world to fund the PFA to make sure that money filters down to those that need it. Goalkeepers, you know, can you imagine the stress and the fingers and the broken wrists that they go through and the arthritis in the fingers? You know, nobody's mentioning that. You know, nobody's mentioning some of the ankles that have been broken through tackles and they're out of place and people are now in wheelchairs because they can't walk. You know, so I think King is right. The money needs to be put forward to make sure that players from that era and they continue. If they even now, there might be some footballers out there that have a great career and they still have to get a job when they retire. They should be looked after as well. So whilst it's a generational thing, it's got to be continued and it's got to be on a par with what they need.
There should also be something for fans for all their suffering as well, Phil, by the
way. Reduction in season ticket price.
We'll take a short break there and listen to Bethany Mangtelo talking about how you can support the Millwall Community Trust.
The Millwall Community Trust, something that I, Bethany Mangtelo, admire for all that it does. The Trust was established in 1985, works to provide sporting, education, social and healthy lifestyle opportunities to the local community in Southwark, Lewisham, North Kent and the wider community. Its work is targeted at people of all ages, irrespective of race, gender or sexual orientation, and runs programmes aimed at tackling social exclusion, racism, knife crime, lack of employment opportunities for young people, mental health and disability issues. The Trust aims to be a progressive and campaigning charity that makes a difference to ordinary people's lives. Its work is undeniably essential to the local community. They have sponsorship opportunities to support this work. Email commercial@millwallcommunity.org.uk. I'll say that again. That is email commercial@millwallcommunity.org.uk. Please help if you can.
I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the No One Likes This Talking team of Phil Coleman and Ted Robertson. If you can donate or sponsor to the Trust, you will help them to deliver all their activities across all the age groups in our community. There have been some happenings within 2 distinct streams of Millwall Football Club. We have seen 3 significant departures from 3 senior roles within the club's administration and 2 departures from the first team playing staff. We've also seen young players depart after not being retained. Ted, were you shocked to see Steve Kavanagh, Alex Aldridge and Billy Taylor depart almost simultaneously after the season's end?
Yeah, I think that the timing of it, and although in hindsight, I think the timing was probably right if you was going to do it. It gives them time to settle people in before the start of the new season. But it was a bit of a shock because it did come a little bit out of the blue. But when I think about the 3 people that you mentioned, I mean, Steve Kavanagh, who's been the CEO for a good few years, you know, and look, I think Steve Kavanagh did a good job, and I think James Berylson, you know, sort of appreciated it and more or less said that. But Alex Aldridge was an appointment from Steve, and I think Billy Taylor was. So I look at it now, and it looks a little bit like when you get rid of the manager of the football team. He takes his backroom staff with him more often than not. As times wore on, the shock has become less, and it's been a little bit more understanding after that. So James is obviously, Berylson is obviously his own man. He's going to do things differently to John. He has his own ideas, and I think that's become apparent from what has happened here. He obviously wants to take the football club in a slightly different direction, and in his opinion, it looks like he believes that to do that, he needed to replace Steve Kavanagh, Alex Aldridge, and Billy Taylor. Time will tell. One thing is we're all on a stable footing here, and the three guys mentioned all done good jobs in their respective positions. So, it's interesting. But as I say, I see it more to do with James Berylson having his vision, which has come out of his dad's eyes, but is in his own eyes, what he believes that he wants Millwall Football Club to achieve and where he wants it to go to. And as I say, when you're in the position as James Berylson is, if you believe you need to change things to get to where you want to go, then you have to do it. And maybe he might have thought, well, Steve Kavanagh's been there for quite a while as a CEO, and he might have thought that things were getting a bit stale. He needed to change it. It might not be that he's got any real reason to let Steve Kavanagh go from the club. It might be, or Alex Aldridge or Billy Taylor. It might be that he just wants to freshen things up and see things going in a different light, because we all know sometimes it can get stale. Football managers now don't last much more than 3-4 years. So why should CEOs and that, if you know what I mean, if you're looking after a football club? So it'd be interesting. I know the guy, Mark Fairbrother's coming. It looks like he's going to be dealing with the financial side of things, and Steve Gallen is going to be looking after the football things. That's one thing that has changed, because I believe Steve Kavanagh was in charge of both in that sense. So it looks like to me that James Berylson's splitting it into two different sort of divisions, where one person will be looking after one side and someone will be looking after the other. Of course, their paths will cross because it has to with finances and what have you, but wants to seem to have them as two separate departments. So be interesting to see what happens and how it goes.
Interesting it will be. Phil, Steve Gallen replaced Alex Aldridge, as Ted rightly pointed out. He's come in as Director of Football. He's previously worked at Charlton, where he was Director of Football and Head of Recruitment as well. He had a short break as assistant head coach to Montserrat before joining us. What are your expectations for the club's future in light of the change?
Well, I think Ted took away my first 2 hours of rambling because James Berylson has clearly got a different opinion and he's appointed his own people. Every chance they'll have a different skill set. I quite like the idea that the football and non-football is split. Very difficult jobs. I don't know Steve Gallen personally, or I only know the name, but clearly James and his advisors like what he's done and what he brings. And that is a hell of a job. The recruitment of players, senior and youth. It's absolutely paramount to the club's success. Get the right players, get the wrong players, get the players with the wrong character, the wrong personality. I'll chuck in what I think is a key point as well. We've got to make sure recruitment of young players. Some of them, unfortunately, don't make the step up to the first team, and that's probably down to the championship. And it's brutal, the championship, tough, physical, fast, quality. And it's okay. It's okay, fans. We're winning the under-18s league and cups, and we're winning the under-21s. That's one thing. But playing against the top teams and top players in the championship is something else. And you really have got to recruit the right players, get good coaching, which we clearly have got. But even then, as fans, why has he been released? Why have we lost all these under-21s? They're not good enough for the league that we're in. And in the manager's eye, he cannot see them playing. So the recruitment of youngsters and bringing them through is one thing. But for me, Steve Gallen has got to work closely with Neil Harris. I'm sure they will. They've got to get players in that actually enhance the first team squad. And that's it in a nutshell. Steve Gallen, working with the manager, has got to bring in players that enhance the first team squad. That's it. It's damn difficult, though. It's in a nutshell, that's what he's got to do. Find these players and get them across the line. You don't necessarily get signatures straight away. You're dealing with contracts, agents, other clubs' demands and the fees that might be paid, the location, bringing them down from another part of the country or another part of the world, like the Flemings that we've got. So there's location issues, schools for kids, and then the wages, and they've all got to stay within budget, within our financial structure. So Steve Gallen's got a hell of a job, and but obviously in James Belson, he's brought somebody in that he clearly trusts and thinks he can do the job to bring in those players for us. So hell of a job, but he's got to get those players in, and Neil Harris will have a shopping list. Steve Gallen will obviously have contacts, and hopefully the decision by Mr. Berylson will bear fruit.
He's also got to work with Scott Fitzgerald, obviously, Phil, the Keighley Academy.
Yeah.
You're right, the Academy's at a certain level at this moment, and there have been some fantastic achievements with the Academy, with the under-14s winning their thing when they beat Arsenal in the final, didn't they? They beat Chelsea, so there's a good little crop coming through there. There's the under-18s have been achieving, there's the under-21s, but as we all know, like Phil quite rightly pointing out, it's one thing winning in that age group, it's another thing going out and playing championship football. But the more we keep developing these sides, hopefully one day we'll have the crop come through like Phil had in his day, and the ones that came through like with Timmy Cahill and that, where they are good enough, and that's what we want. And of course, the other side of it is separating it away from the football side. I mentioned Mark Fairbrother. He's also obviously got a lot to do. There's a new training ground that's going to be coming along hopefully soon. There's the surrounding area now that the lease has been secured for the 999 years. There's lots of activity on that front, and maybe that's a reason why James thought to himself, well, Steve Kavanagh can't do this, and this. I need to separate it. I'm guessing a bit here, but it seems like we was just saying, and Phil was saying, it's separating the football from the financial side of it, and I like that in that sense. Even though we all know it crosses because of wages, but that's a good thing with the amount of work that's going to be coming on board for Millwall Football Club with their new training stadium and around the ground. So, both Mark Fairbrother and Steve Gallen, I wish them both all the best, because I think, if these two guys are successful, then our football club is going to be in a very, very good position. And before we know it, I know I'm a dreamer, but we might be the next Man City coming along. Now, don't laugh, Myles. You never know.
Ted, Mark, if you are a Millwall fan, you are looking at a 999-year lease, and we're going to be improving the ground. We're going to be improving surrounding the ground. Well, that is going to be a long-term income to the club. And just look at the site, look at the plans. There is huge income on its way. I'm not sure when. It's probably going to be at least 5, 6, 10 years down the line. But if you can stay in the Championship and keep building, keep bringing the commercial money in, keep building the season tickets. Our biggest crowds for a long, long time last season. So they're doing something right. Some fans call it boring on the pitch, but there are more and more people going down there to watch the games. And I don't care where they're foreigners, there are more and more people watching the game. Mark Fairbrother clearly has a background in finance. He's clearly been punching at the top end at Formula E and wherever he's been. He has been brought in to make sure that income stream comes in and these things are realised. The stadium development, the development around the whole area under that 999-year lease, the new training ground, all what you've touched on, Ted. So it's looking good. It's quite exciting in some ways to see some of this stuff. Millwall Football Club is talking about this stuff, and it's amazing, to be honest with you. A little club in South East 16 is punching down that line and needing these people to come in and make sure it's realised, and the fruits of their labour hopefully come down the line, and we'll have a really secure future. and we might not be relying on the owner to put millions in every year in loans and buying back. But it's actually in the Championship, with everything that's already gone on the last couple of years. Last season was a season and a half. If the recruitment is right and we get some better players in to go with what we've already got, we could be punching at the top of the table as well. And all the whole package I've just mentioned, what you've mentioned, Ted, is quite exciting times if you're a Millwall fan.
Yeah, well, I've been saying for years, Phil, they've been talking about, like, building, extending the ground, should we say, and whatever. And then people start saying, well, we're going to fill it. Well, there's a simple way to fill it. And I can assure everyone how, personally, I believe, if Millwall were to get into the Premier League, the ground would be sold out every week. Even with, an extension being put on it or the attendance level taken up. Because we all know that what it's like when it comes to big games down at Millwall, we sell out. And that's even with lots of people not bothering to come. When you're a football club like Millwall that could sell out the old Wembley when we had the cup that we was in there, the auto windscreen, that means there's a fan base out there that's just itching to come and watch Millwall in the Premier League. And I don't think there's any doubt about it that if we made the ground improvements and made the attendance higher, if we was in the Premier League, that would get filled.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Mark returns to the club, obviously, where he previously held the positions of Chief Financial Officer and Company Secretary, following a period as Vice President of Finance in Formula E, which continues to organise the world's fully first electric racing series. A lot is going on in the plans for the Den, as you've both quite rightly pointed out, with its extensive lease and the approved plans for the Kent training ground. So, Mark, Fairbrother, is that a good appointment in your eyes?
Well, I think, Formula E is an up-and-coming form of racing, which, any new sport like that takes a lot of organising and get going, and he's done a pretty good job there, I must admit. So, as Phil said, I think James Berylson, because he knows Mark Fairbrother from his time at Millwall and whatever, obviously feels he's the right man for the job. And, I'm not sure if there's many better candidates around there, but we've certainly got a good one, I believe. I don't know how Phil sees it.
I think if you're the Vice President of Finance in Formula E, it's a global sport. It goes across the world. It's all over the place. It's a bit like Formula One with fast electric cars, but it's a global brand. And if you're punching at that level, to come back to Millwall, you will have a very good understanding of finance, of development in a particular sport, in how to grow the brand. And is that what James Berylson's looking at? Does he want him to grow the brand? Does he want him to make sure that we're all over America? I often quote the two guys, the two film stars that went into Wrexham. A little tiny club like that selling 40,000 shirts last year. And they're being watched by thousands, if not millions, in North America. So, Formula E, global brand, Millwall. Are we going to get that exposure? Is Mark Fairbrother seen by James Berylson as somebody that can actually promote the club and knows where to go to make it a bigger brand and realise more commercial opportunities, as well as all the developments that we've already spoken about? So, yeah, it seems like a great appointment to make, as even if when you look at his CV, it's just backed with finance. He's a master of finance by the look of it. So a good appointment for me.
Yep. We'll take a break there and listen to...
Hi Ellie, lovely to see you here up in Harvey's Den again. And of course you've taken over from the Brown family. Cafe that they have here is just wonderful. Millwall shirts on the chairs, blue and white tablecloths, blue chairs, and all you guys in Millwall kit.
Of course.
Tell me, what goes on? When are you here? What can we expect?
We're here Monday to Friday from 10:30 till 5 every day, open to the public. Everyone's welcome. We're open every match day from 11:30 till 2:30. We've got a new family, a new little CAF team, and the girls up here are all lovely and friendly.
So who are the girls that are up here?
We've got myself, Ellie, of course, and then we've got Nicole, who works during the week. We've got Michelle, who also works during the week. She's lovely. And Lena, who works on a match day. And my mum, Ellen, who's very well known.
Very well known.
She also helps out in here from time to time. So we've got a lovely little family team.
To look after the community. Exactly. Wonderful stuff. So what's on offer at the cafe these days?
We've got everything from chicken burgers to paninis to full breakfasts, tea, coffee, hot chocolate, soft drinks, snacks, everything you could need.
So it's all here, all available, a great team to serve it up to you. Well, what else can I say but carry on in Harvey's style here at Harvey's Den Cafe, and all the best to you, Ellie, and your team, and I look forward to coming up and enjoying some of the fare in not the far distant future. Well, in fact, I've already done that. The coffee is just superb. Thanks, Ellie.
Thanks, Eamon.
I'm your host, Myles Thornton, and with me I have the No One Likes This Talking team with Phil Coleman and Ted Robertson. Get down to the Lion Centre if you're in the area, or use the facility event at the Trust. We mentioned two critical departures from our first team squad, Bart Bielkowski and Sean Hutchinson. These departures disturbed some fans who voiced their opinions across social media. I believe they served our club well, and I wish them all the very best in the future. We also said goodbye to several loanees: Japhet Tanganga, Brooke Norton-Cuffy, Michael Obafemi, Ryan Longman and Alan Campbell. Given both of those leaving us without having their contracts renewed, and those returning to their parent clubs, what do you hope Steve Gallen will secure for our first team squad ahead of the 2024-25 season? And maybe, do you hope a couple of them might come back? Ted, we'll start with you.
Look, it's the start of the silly season, as they say, because as Phil was pointing out at the start of the show, when it comes to the end of the season, all them footballers want to do is put their feet up, and they're not due back till the 26th of June, and a lot of contracts don't finish till the beginning of July as such and whatever. And there was always going to be little things that come out that will form something of the transfer market, like Tanganga being, everybody knows now that Tottenham have released him, so he's on a free. But then obviously straight away it was not only Millwall, there was Luton, Ipswich, whatever, supposed to be interested in him. Who knows whether they are? It might be his agent drumming it up a little bit so he can get as much money as he can for Tanganga when he signs. So all these things, and all we want to know as football fans is who's going to be playing for us on the first day of the season. And it will come out, but as I'm sure Phil will explain to you, as a person that's played the game and been in it, it's not just about you playing football, it's about where your family live, it's where where do you go? Is it somewhere you're going to be comfortable with? It's different if you're going out on loan and you can get tempted to a club just so you can go and be playing football. But when you're talking about somewhere that you want to be permanently, or then all them sort of things that us as fans don't consider have to be considered by the players and alike. But listen, I wouldn't be surprised if Tanganga joins us, but then I wouldn't be surprised if he went to Ipswich, because I think he's good enough to have another shot at the Premier League. But I for one hope we sign him. I wouldn't mind seeing Longman back down there. I don't think there's much chance of Campbell or Obafemi. Maybe Norton-Cuffy. I don't know what's exactly happening with him at Arsenal at the moment. But if it's not Norton-Cuffy, it'll be somebody else like Norton-Cuffy that might come here, because Millwall have in recent seasons done pretty well out of loanees of Premier League sides at the age of 18, 19 that come down here. But I say Longman done enough for me to say, I wouldn't mind seeing him down here on a permanent basis, and Tanganga. Just a quick mention about Bart and Sean, two fantastic servants at the football club, without a doubt, in more ways than one, not only for their ability on the pitch, but also off the pitch. Two really great guys. And it was a pleasure not only to see them on the pitch, but to speak to them off of it. And so, but with everyone, your time comes, and I think the time was right for Bart. to move on. Probably through his injuries more than anything. I think the time was right for Sean Hutchinson to move on. When you think that Millwall got Alex Mitchell, who's come back from a loan spell, you've got Carmel Grant, who got promoted with Bromley, and Chin Coley, who also got time playing at Bromley. They're floating around in the background, whether they're going to be good enough or whether, Mill believe that they need to go out again. It's all got to be looked at, and I'm sure Neil's fathoming that out as we speak. But Steve Gallen will do his bit, and there will be players coming in. We know that. The trouble is we just have to be a bit patient because we all are going to start playing the guessing game that goes around every season. Will he come to us? Won't he come to us? I even see something somewhere that said Mario Balotelli might be on his way. Was that through you, Myles? Was it?
I saw something online. Yeah, I posted it.
Yeah. But this is what I mean. It's a silly season, isn't it? Like all these rumours will start flying around with not too much evidence based, if you know what I mean. There's a lot goes on, and I'm sure Phil will talk about his favourite subject. The players' agents, they throw things out left, right, and centre to make the waters a little bit murkier than they really are, just so they can try and get a bit more for their people. But I'm quietly confident that we have the squad already of the players that are there, that with the right additions to it can have a right go at it this season. We've got some good youngsters floating around, Maku and SA, another year on, another year wiser at championship football. I believe in Maku, we have a real star on our hands if he can stay fit. SA, I think, could be absolutely anything he wants to be. So that's a good start there with two youngsters. But I generally think that the grounding of the squad, as it is really good. We just need the correct players to come in to just take us to that next level. That's how I see it, Myles.
Phil, what do you think of it?
Yeah, in any club, Bart's, Hutch and those loans are going to be a big loss, and they need replacing. There's a package, as Ted said, there's a package when a manager looks at releasing a player. Could be age, could be injuries, might want to free up wages. Their current playing opportunities might be limited, so you let them go so they can play elsewhere. The manager might have better lined up, hopefully. Or, as sometimes happens, they just want to go back home, wherever home may be, another country, another move back up north to where their families are. They've just had enough time. They've had enough of being away. So, replacing Bart, we need a good backup goalkeeper, that's for sure. I think we need at least two quality centre-backs, probably a right-back and a left-back. So that's where those loans and centre-backs are coming in. We need wide players, Longman, for sure. He got better. Mentioned Tanganga at the back. An Obafemi type up front. As a defender, I hated pace. I could deal with absolutely anything, but if somebody was really quick, and so that type of striker, I think we look to get in. Loans could be vital. You know, it's proven we haven't got the biggest salary, but it's a great way of getting quality players in on perhaps half of their wages or a negotiated less, even a quarter or whatever their wages are, is certainly not going to be the full amount if you take somebody on loan. So the club could use the loan market cleverly. At the back, we've actually got Wes Harding and Alex Mitchell, and Alex has been out on loan, and he's got good football at Lincoln and up in Scotland. We've got Wallace and Cooper, but I think with those four ageing and Alex Mitchell unproven, I think we definitely need to, because without Leonard, let's be honest, Leonard was a revelation playing at the back, and without Leonard and Tanganga, we do need some centre backs to cover in this league. We could have struggled without Leonard being so great. So really, it's over to Steve Gallen and Neil Harris. I'm sure they've got their shopping list. I'm sure the talks are going. Players' contracts don't actually finish till the 30th of June. So I think it might have to be patient until the 30th of June, and then people will not be taking up their offers. There'll be free agents, there'll be free contracts, off they go. and then people start taking them. But I'll also say Neil Harris has got a bit of a track record of getting some good players in before, so I think it might have been him who signed Bart. I need to find out about that one. But no, we need good players to replace what we've lost, and that's where you need a decent director of recruitment, and hopefully Steve Gallen is the person, as I say, working with Neil Harris to bring those players in. If they do, happy days. If they don't, I think we could be struggling somewhere, particularly at the back. But yeah, that's my thoughts. Cheers, Myles.
I think Phil, the beauty of Neil Harris, he does, as you say, he's brought some good players in. You don't get it wrong very often, Neil, but he knows what it takes within a player to be a Millwall player, which is something that I think is key to us as a football club. He knows and understands how strong character that a player has to be when he comes to Millwall. And I think
agree, Ted. I've said in the past, you can have all the ability, you can have all the heart and all the brain decision making, but if you've got no character, and if one of those four is missing, and I think Neil Harris has got this track, he gets in characters that are solid, dependable, work hard, never let you down, and they get the club. They understand you've got to put a shift in, to put it politely. Just put a bloody shift in and go out there and prove to the fans that you're up for the fight. And then we'll play. And I think if you can balance a bit of skill and a bit of flair with the character and determination in a player, and I think Neil Harris has done that quite well over the years. And I'll be honest with you, so did Gary Rowett. Gary signed some good players as well in his time. So it's interesting, but I think the shopping list is there, and it's basically replacing what we had in the two that are released and the loans. There could be big losses there.
What I see, Phil, or visualise next year, and what I hope and pray is that we come out next year a bit like Luton did the year they got promoted. Because what Luton was, I remember watching them thinking, God, this is an horrible side to play against. They were big, physical, strong, but they had a little bit about them up front. They could, certainly had two guys that knew where the goal was in that sense. But you could just see it was a game that nobody would relish playing against Luton, and they battled their way into the Premier League. And I think, with all due respect to Millwall, and I think it's what Neil was hinting at the end of last season, he believes he can see the battling qualities in there. This is why I say I think we've got the foundations there. I think he can see the battling qualities in what he's got within that squad. He just needs to find them one or two players. And I don't disagree with you where you say we need strengthening and whatever. There's always going to be the little gamble that will one of the likes of Alex Mitchell, Chinakoli or Jamel Grant say, will they stay with us or will they go on loan? They could stay with us and turn out to be star players. Like you say, you've got Wes Harding again there. Maybe he could come good again for us. But I think Neil sees the battling qualities within this team. And yet we was winning games 1-0 at the end of last season, and that's how I think he sees it going forward. But I think he knows we just need that little bit extra going forward, that little bit more of a spark. I think he needs to find a bit of physicality up front. I think we need someone like a young Steve Morrison to come on board, a mobile but physical centre forward. I think that would make a massive difference to this team. You're right about the pace. I'm hoping that Amaku might be one of them gambles because he is quick, that boy. And I'm hoping that he's strengthened up a bit through the pre-season and, because he is rapid. So, there's plenty there to work on. But I think with Neil, he knows the type of players that he needs and the type of players that he needs to have to be a good success at Millwall. So let's keep our fingers crossed. Come on, Neil.
Ted, I'll back you up on that as well, because by finding the right players, we might actually turn around and everyone laughs and it's typical Millwall. It's typical Millwall that we beat Leicester and Southampton, but we lose to Huddersfield and Rotherham, right?
Yeah.
That is, if you're in professional football, that is not what a manager the manager is going to turn around and say, how the hell did that happen? It's not happening next season.
Yeah.
We are going to beat the teams at the bottom of the league. And why did it happen this season? Is it their attitude? It's only Rotherham. Right, well, let's get rid of the players that have got an attitude of rolling their sleeves up when it's Leicester and they fancy it, but they don't fancy it at Rotherham. So those players have got to go. That's an attitude problem. Now, with Neil, I think he's got that a bit of steel in his toughness in him, where he'll bring in players with a character to go away to Rotherham on a freezing cold night in February and say, we're winning 1-0, and this is how we're going to do it because I've got the players to do it. Not, let's go and beat Southampton. Well, hey, we're all up for this because it's a new manager. Oh, I can't be bothered today against Huddersfield. Because Huddersfield and Rotherham, are you telling me that they're that good, that they could match us? And then you can't have that seismic shift between the two types of results. So I think he's got to equal it out across the whole season. Say, we're going to be damned hard to beat. We're going to be creative when we have to. And we're going to have one or two people up front that can score us 8, 9, 10 goals each. And we will be in a strong position. But we can't have this fluctuation where we fancy it and beat the top teams and we lose to the bottom sides. That's not how you stay in the league. And that's not how you get into the playoffs, at least.
No, it's a consistency thing, Phil, isn't it? You know, when you look at the very end of the season where we had 5 wins on the spin, then that's consistent. You can stomach a defeat after 5 wins if you go out and then you win the next 5 as well, you know. And I think you're right. That's what he's going to be looking for, is that consistency. And you can't, as you say, go to the likes of Rotherham. Whilst we shouldn't have lost that game, Rotherham, but we did. The fact of the matter is we did, and we did lose the game exactly the same against Huddersfield. That can't happen next season.
We struggled at QPR. They were bottom of the league. We struggled there as well. You know, there's a if you're in professional,
there's a common theme there, isn't there?
Yeah, you're looking at Dave Brailsford used marginal gains. There's some big games here. How did we lose to the bottom teams? Let's work that one out and let's shore it up and let's deal with it. You know, because that is in effect 9, 12 points. Well, all of a sudden we're punching in the playoffs. You know, so. There will be an analysis of how they played and who they played and how to get the best song out of some of the players and how we're going to win away from home and how we're going to play at home. So, yeah, it's a lot to look forward to. But I think Steve Gallen and Neil Harris, the recruitment, as I mentioned earlier in the show, is absolutely vital, getting the right players in.
Well, that's it now. Until the July monthly show. Phil, thank you for coming on, mate.
No problems. Loved it. Enjoyed it as ever.
Ted, you too. Thank you very much.
Been a pleasure, Myles, as always.
And thank you very much to those listening. In the meantime, enjoy the Euros. The first game kicks off on Friday, June the 14th, when host Germany face Scotland. 2 days later, England will play Serbia in their first group game. All the best to the only 2 home nations that are participating. Until next time, keep it safe on the streets out there.